This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
Now, the Arsenal attack this year, I think in terms of expected numbers, are pretty decent. Much better than last season at this stage of the season. But in terms of actual fluency, the eye test, watching our team play going forwards, I've seen numbers as well to back this up, but I think a lot of people mention that we're taking too long in the final third to make the final action, or just keeping the ball in the final third and playing the U pass, passing around, not putting the ball into the box. So Alex, what do you think Mikel Arteta needs to do to take the attack to the next level? Because we've seen the wide forwards are holding the width, but I think at times they become too isolated and we're not using the overlap as much either. I think the idea is to have the number 8s, play, make the underlapping runs into the box, and it works sometimes, but, right now Arsenal don't look as good as they looked last season to the fans on eyes, and ultimately football is about entertainment. And right now Arsenal's attack isn't as entertaining as it was last year. So what can Mikel Arteta do to take the attack to the next level?
When we think about last season in terms of how we operated and why it was so entertaining, two names come to mind, Saka and Martinelli. And, you can go watch the YouTube comps or whatever. That was such a good feel-good factor last season. That was part of the reason everyone absolutely loved last season, is because of the fluency of those two guys. The reason they were able to do that is because they established a connection across the box. How many goals were scored basically from one of them passing to the other across the box? But they're inside. They're in lane 4, they're in lane 2. And just on their own, getting into lane 4 and lane 2. Martinelli against Leicester. Saka against Man United. Perfect examples. Getting inside. The problem at the moment is that we are entering the final third far too wide. We're being forced to play outside of the opposition shape, and we're really lacking a connection in between the lines. If you look at the passing networks, Scott Willis does great data on this, obviously on Twitter. I think he's at Scott J. Willis. Go look at the passing networks from this season compared to last season. The one thing you'll notice is that the combination between the centre-backs and the 8s has completely gone. There's no line between Saliba and Martin Odegaard. There just isn't one. There's one, a small one against Fulham, but there is absolutely no combination. So teams have worked out, as George mentioned earlier on in the podcast, how to stop Arsenal. You stop them progressing centrally. You protect your half spaces like in the way that Fulham did, like no end. They put 4 people in their half space, right? So we've got a problem. Right? We've also got a problem with, mostly, they've been playing with Eddie Nketiah, who's a very different profile to Gabi Jesus, who's more of a facilitator, drops more out wide, allows Saka to come inside. So that is the main issue. Getting those high, those were our guys who are best non-penalty XG numbers last season. Those were our guys with our highest goal-scoring record last season, other than Martin Odegaard. They are the guys who are going to get you inside and score more goals and be more fluent. But they're also going to do what you mentioned earlier, is make it look better to the eye. Because what we loved last season was the rotations. Now, that is about getting them inside. And how do you do that? Okay, you look at your centre-backs and making sure that you're getting that connection so the 8s can then play that ball onto them and they can play get the ball moving quickly through the thirds. But you also need to get your 8s rolling out wide. And I think at the moment, the movement of our 8s, and which is why I keep coming back to the idea of swapping them round, isn't quite facilitating that. I actually advocated for Trossard against Manchester United because I liked the idea of Trossard stepping out onto the wing and Martinelli coming inside. I also advocated for possibly playing with Smith Rowe so you can, or bringing him on, so you can drop him out wide and allow Saka to come inside. Again, it's not about having them there all the time because they're important wide receivers out wide, and it's important they get those progressive passing numbers that they get, which are unbelievable. But also you can have times where they're able to come inside. That means you get fluency. That means you get your best goal scorers closer to goal. And I think it will be more entertaining because we'll see those guys there. At the moment, teams have worked us out. And that's one of my frustrations with Arteta so far this season, that he hasn't fixed that quick enough. Not that it's an easy thing to fix.
Yeah, if we're talking specifically about entertainment, there is one specific striker who is very entertaining to watch, and he scored a lovely goal on Sunday. I mean, what a goal that was. The composure in the final third, to cut it back and to just pass it into the back of the net in the celebration. It was cold, it was fantastic, and I was so lucky to watch it live. Gabriel Jesus, George, and Eddie Nketiah. Arsenal got 2 strikers right now in pretty decent form. I mean, Jesus just obviously scored, but especially in terms of Eddie Nketiah, his first ever call up to England, confidence is high, and I think before, he went off the pitch, I think he was one of Arsenal's best players in terms of occupying both centre-backs, offering Arsenal an outlet. Obviously, I think he could maybe do a bit more in terms of goal scoring, but, that's a lot to ask for a striker, especially in terms of the rest of his play. So, going forwards, to maximise both Martinelli and Saka, and talking about the rotations, as Alex mentioned as well, Who do you reckon is the best striker for Arsenal to start? Is it Nketiah? Is it Jesus? Or is it change game by game?
No, I think, unfortunately, this is the one time I'm going to be black and white. Gabriel Jesus is our best striker. Period.
Okay.
End of story. I think that Eddie Nketiah has been in brilliant form. I think that he's one of the strikers that is probably the most in form for Arsenal. But Gabby Jesus gives us a level of wide overloads that none of the strikers give. It allows for a certain fluidity in the front line that, again, no one else gives. And it doesn't mean that you hate Eddie to say, listen, a better player is going to start in front of you. And I think that Eddie's done brilliant in his absence. But just fundamentally, you can see how much the team trusts him. And I think that he gives you a reference that, you know, the attack misses quite a bit when he's not on the pitch. And, you know, the one thing is he is getting, you know, our wingers inside a lot more. And he does that by overlapping wide. He does that by coming inside. And he does it by also offering solutions deep as well. Like Gabby Jesus is somebody that I think generates so much football for us that it's impossible to justify leaving him out on the pitch. Now, there's going to be moments for Eddie Nketiah to kind of come in certain game states where it makes sense to have that type of channel runner. But I just think that we saw a very complete cameo on the weekend. And it wasn't just a goal, by the way. Like, he was doing brilliant kind of work on the right-hand side, really occupying players. And I think that he's got a level to go to, and he was just bubbling for me. So I think Gabby Jesus is the undoubted starter of the Arsenal team for a striker position. And I think if we need to change a game, then we can look towards an Eddie Nketiah. Then we can look towards Kai Havertz, Trossard. The different versatility we have is not to replace Jesus. It's to supplement him.
Yeah. I want to just give a shout to Havertz as a striker, because some people on Twitter believe he is the next Van Persie. We know who we're talking about here. So, Alex, do you think there is a possibility that Havertz could be transformed into a all-action number 9 at all?
No.
Okay, simple. Right, let's move on.
No, I can elaborate if you want, but no. Because that's not who... Firstly, we've had confirmation from the coach that he's going to play him in midfield. That's so we can
but
end that
That.
conversation. Well, that's fine, but then if you believe, not only do you believe you know better than the manager, it's not only that, you believe that the coach will change his mind based on what you think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, the arrogance is beyond belief, right? Mikel has given you the answer, so you may not like that, but the idea that he'll come to see my opinion is crazy to me, and we all know who we're talking about. The second thing is, I think that when you look at what Arsenal need next summer, it is not in any way that kind of shrinking, facilitative, nuanced type of player that Havertz is, that takes time and long conversations to understand. Like, no matter what you believe Havertz is, he's not a plug and play. Arsenal are crying out for a 30-goal a season Evan Ferguson. I mean, that is like, I would sell both of my kidneys. Do you have 2 kidneys? You only have 1 kidney. I would sell however many kidneys I have. I don't know how many I have, to get Evan Ferguson. I think he has absolutely everything you need. But he's a guy who stays within the box. He's a guy I watched him against Newcastle. I mean, how do you place a shot from 25 yards? It's crazy. But he has that. He has that everything in his locker, everything he needs. So Arsenal know they have that option to go there, to go nuclear with the Haaland thing, and I just can't see in any way why they would have gone with that Havertz profile when that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about transfers now.
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.